Hi, before we start this ASMR video, I'd like to thank all these members on my Patreon for their continued support. If you're looking for any content that I create on other platforms, check the link below. Now, let's get into the video. So, I'm going to be reading you a story. You can either have your eyes open or you can have your eyes closed. It's going to be a longer story, and I want you to imagine that you're there. So, without further ado, let's get into it. This story is called The Glow of the Tides, a Whispered Journey. The air was soft, not just silent, but soft, as if the entire sky had inhaled and never quite exhaled, blanketing the world in a gentle hush. You stood at the edge of a sleepy coastal village where the land ended and the ocean began. The sand was cool beneath your bare feet, cradling your souls like the memory foam shaped by centuries of forgotten dreams. Above, twilight stretched like a silk sheet dipped in lilac and rose, fading slowly into the deepening blues of the night. Waves rolled in, not loudly, but rhythmically. Their sighs filled the air like lullabies murmured through the conch shells. The foam curled forward, then slipped away again, over and over, like the breath of something ancient and kind. Nearby, golden lanterns hung from driftwood poles, swaying slightly in the sea breeze. Each one cast a warm circle of light onto the sand, like a soft footprint left by a passing star. They didn't flicker with urgency. They pulsed, slowly, steady, and calm, as though each lantern had a heartbeat of its own. A narrow path of cobblestones half buried in the sand and the seagrass led away from the beach. Its stones were warm and rounded, polished by the time and bare feet like yours. A wooden sign stood where the sand met the path, carved with the care weathered by the salt. Drift hollow, where dreams begin. You followed the path without hesitation. To your left and right, quiet cottages sat tucked into wildflower-covered hillsides. Their windows glowed from within, amber, honey, and soft tangerine. Smoke curled from the chimneys in thin, sleepy streams. Somewhere, a wind chime let out a few delicate notes, like a lullaby that forgot its words but remembered the feeling. You passed a cat curled in a windowsill, its chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. A man with silver hair sat on his porch, eyes closed, rocking gently as if time didn't apply to him. You nodded as you passed, and he gave you a smile, peaceful, knowing as though he had walked the same path many times before. As the path meandered inland, the sound of the waves grew fainter, replaced by the chirr of crickets and the distant bubbling of a stream. Fireflies had begun to emerge, blinking in unhurried pulses between the tall grasses, their light soft and sleepy. Eventually, the cobblestones ended at a weathered wooden dock that stretched out into a calm, still lagoon. A small rowboat waited at the end, bobbing ever so slightly in the water. Painted in faded stones of sea foam and pearl, it looked like it had grown from the sea itself. You stepped into it, and it rocked gently just once, as if saying hello. Inside, the boat was lined with folded blankets and a single lantern that flickered low and golden. You sat, and, without effort, the boat began to move, drifting forward into the lagoon as if carried by breath alone. The water was impossibly clear. Beneath you, you could see stones and smooth shells resting undisturbed on the lagoon's bed. Small fish flitted past, their silvery bodies catching glimpses of lantern light like living stars. Above, the first real stars of the night blinked into being, scattered across the sky in patterns older than language. You lay back onto the cushions, letting the cool air kiss your skin. Each breath you took felt slower than the last, like the night was teaching your body how to rest. You watched the sky shift and spin as your boat glided forward in silence. Around a bend, the lagoon widened, and there it was. A floating platform, anchored gently in the center, wrapped in gauzy white curtains that fluttered like whispers in the wind. Dozens of pillows and cushions covered its surface in shades of blue, dove gray, and sea foam. Lanterns floated above, suspended by nothing you could see, casting down their glow in perfect halos. Your boat slowed and came in to rest beside it. You climbed out and stepped onto the platform. It didn't creak, it didn't sway, it accepted your presence like it had been waiting for you all along. You lay down, sinking into the pillows, your body warm and heavy, molded to the softness. The curtains rustled gently, brushing against your arms like kind hands. The stars above you shimmered bright now, undisturbed by the city's lights or thought. A voice, not outside, but within, whispered gently in the quiet. You are safe. You are home. You are free to rest now. And so you did. The platform beneath you barely moved. It breathed, if a structure could do such a thing, in gentle pulses aligned with the rhythm of the tide. You could feel the night wrapping around you like a favorite blanket. Nothing needed to be said. Nothing needed to be done. All you had to do was lie there, listen, and be. Somewhere far across the lagoon, a soft bell chimed. Not the jarring clang of a clock tower or the ring of urgency, but a low, resonant tone that vibrated gently through the water and air alike. It rang once, then faded, a pause, then another, each chime spaced perfectly, like the beating of a distant heart. You imagined the bell belonged to a lighthouse somewhere in the distance, a beacon whose only job was to remind travelers they were not alone. The sound felt familiar, like something from a childhood, like being rocked in the arms of someone who would never let you go. The air around you cooled slightly as a breeze passed through, carrying with it the scent of the sea and something else. Lemongrass, maybe, or chamomile. It whispered across your cheeks, brushed the back of your hair, traced the line of your jaw like a feather. You let it happen. You welcomed it. You were so still now. even your thoughts had slowed to match the pace of the night. The lanterns above pulsed again, syncing with the soft chime, with the tide of your breath. Inhale, 2, 3, hold. Exhale, 2, 3, release. The entire world seemed to be in rhythm with you, as though the universe itself had tuned in to melody to match your most relaxed state. You shifted slightly in the nest of the pillows, not to adjust, but to melt further. You felt your shoulders release a tension you hadn't noticed, your jaw unclenched, your hands relaxed. Even the tiny muscles around your eyes softened into a smile. You didn't even realize you had smiled. And then you heard it, a gentle melody, faint, far away, and yet perfectly clear. It wasn't coming from any instrument you could name. It was like water singing, wind humming, stars whispering in harmony. A lullaby composed by the night itself. You didn't need to know the words. You already knew the meaning. Rest, it said. Float. Be. Breathe. You stayed like that for a while. Minutes, maybe more, maybe less. Time had lost its structure. There was no rush. You were allowed to be here, to float inside this moment, as long as your spirit needed. Eventually, a thought arrived, not as an interruption, but like a leaf drifting down onto still water. You realized that here, in this space between the sea and the sky, you had finally found your silence that wasn't empty. It was full of memory, warmth, and stillness, the kind of silence that just heals by just existing. You closed your eyes not to sleep, but to sink deeper, deeper into the pillow, deeper into the platform, and deeper into yourself. The waves below rocked gently, the lanterns blinked softly, the melody hummed quietly, and your breath became the tide. Inhale, hold, exhale, let go. And with that release, part one of your journey faded, not to black, but to velvet. Not an end, just a beginning. Part two. The stars had shifted above you just slightly, enough that you could feel time moving again, but not enough to disturb the spell of the night that had been cast. You were still floating on a platform, cradled in softness, wrapped in the gentle sound and distant light. The tide moved beneath you in perfect rhythm. You could feel it like a second heartbeat. Inhale, hold, exhale, release. The water's breath had become your own. You sat up slowly, not because you wanted to leave, but because something in you was ready to explore further. The curtains danced around you, stirred by a wind that felt curious and kind. As you looked out across the lagoon, the floating lanterns had rearranged themselves, now forming a winding path that led deeper into the distance, towards something unknown, glowing faintly at the horizon. The boat had waited. It sat motionless beside the platform, bobbing softly, the lantern still lit at its bow. You stepped into it once more, and again it accepted you without protest. It turned slowly, gently, and began to follow the new trail of lanterns. This time, the water was deeper, darker, still as glass. The air had cooled slightly, and the stars above now shimmered like threads of silver lace. They reflected across the lagoon in long, stretching streaks of light. You passed beneath them like a traveler moving through the belly of a dream. Around you, soft echoes began to rise from the water. Not voices, not music, but memories. They came as feelings, as warmth, as flashes of scenes too soft to see clearly. You felt laughter, tears, the weight of a hand in yours, the sound of your own name spoken with love. The lanterns pulsed gently in time with each one. It wasn't overwhelming. It was grounding, a reminder that you had lived and that life itself had meaning, even in its quietest, smallest moments. The boat curved again, and you saw it, a second platform, but different from the first. This one was round, low to the water, with glowing bowls of water placed in perfect circles along its edges. Each bowl shimmered with a swirling light, like small galaxies contained in still pools. At the center sat a single chair, made of woven driftwood and linen, angled towards the open sky. The boat stopped. You stepped out. As your feet touched the platform, the bowls began to hum, not with sound, but with vibration. You could feel it in your chest, a soft, loving frequency that settled into your bones. As you approached the center and sat down, the chair welcomed you. Your back rested into it, your arms draped over the sides. The wind wrapped gently around your ankles. Then everything paused. No lanterns flickered. No water moved. No sound lingered. Only breath. Your breath. And then a new light appeared. It wasn't above, and it wasn't below. It was within you. It shimmered gently behind your closed eyelids, warming you from the inside out. The feeling was not of brightness, but of being seen completely, deeply, and without judgment. The inner light expanded slowly. You weren't glowing outward. The world was glowing inward. You weren't ascending. You were grounding. You were becoming so present that the time forgot how to move forward. The bowls around the edge of the platform began to glow in harmony, each one pulsing a slightly different hue. Soft blue, honey gold, pale lavender, and blush. Their lights moved in a circle, slow and soothing, like the turning of planets. They spun not to move you, but to still you. Each breath became more profound, every blink more intentional. You placed your palms on the arms of the chair and felt the warmth of the wood. A wave of memory passed through you, not a specific one, but the feeling of being held when you were small, of someone's hand stroking your hair, of soft lullabies sung from another room. That kind of warmth. A voice arrived again, just as it had before, not through sound, but sensation. "You are not broken," it whispered through your heart. "You are becoming." The words spread like sunlight across still water. They didn't rush to reach you. They took their time, like everything else here, as if the message itself knew that you were ready now. The chair beneath you rocked slightly, and you let open your eyes. The stars above were closer now. You could see the delicate motion of the glimmer. You could almost hear them singing, not with words, but in harmony. The whole sky was a lullaby, written in light. You took another breath, deeper this time, then one more. You stood slowly. The vibration from the bowls faded into stillness. Not silence, stillness. Like everything had been said, and now it was time to rest again. The boat waited, as it always did. You stepped aboard, and it turned one final time, gliding silently away from the second platform. You didn't look back. You didn't need to. It wasn't behind you. It was inside you now. As the boat continued its path, the lagoon narrowed slightly, leading you into a smaller inlet framed by high cliffs and quiet reeds. The wind had stilled. The sky deepened into velvet. Above, a full moon rose and cast its silver path across the water, inviting you forward, but gently. There was no hurry, no destination, only presence. Tiny blossoms floated along the water's edge, moonflowers, soft and white, unfurling only in the quietest of nights. You reached out and touched one. Its petals were like silk. It drifted against your skin, paused, then moved on, as if saying goodbye in a language only hearts could understand. Finally, your boat curved around a bend and slowed. A new place arrived. A third platform, unlike the others. This one was lined with woven mats and low cushions, all arranged beneath a canopy of soft gauze that hung from curved wooden beams. The space felt like a dream given form. Incense drifted in slow spirals through the air, and the scent, warm vanilla, sandalwood, and something like fresh rain wrapped around you in like memory. You stepped out and sat down, this time cross-legged on the softest mat. A breeze passed through the gauze above, and it made the canopy ripple like breath. A final lantern hovered beside you, low to the ground, casting shadows that moved like waves. You placed your hands over your heart. You closed your eyes, and the voice returned, not to guide you, but to join you. You are light. You are stillness. You are everything you've ever needed. The final sounds of the night settled into your chest, and you breathed, and you were whole. Part 3. The night was deep now, not dark, never dark, but wrapped in something thicker, softer, the kind of night that feels like velvet against your skin. The moon above had reached its peak, casting long, sweeping beams of silver light that rippled gently across the water. You sat on the mat beneath the gauze canopy, your breathing steady. Every inhale felt cooler, lighter. Every exhale sank deeper into calm. Your hands still rested over your chest, where the waited, and the world waited. You rose slowly, as if waking from a dream within a dream. The canopy fluttered behind you, as if waving goodbye, and then with one final glance at the glowing mat where you'd been cradled in peace, you stepped onto the boat once more. The tide was shifting, just barely. Not a push, but a pull. The boat turned on its own, floating back through the lagoon in silence. The water shimmered with reflections of all the places you've been, the platforms, the lanterns, the echoes of your breath. But now they were quieter, smaller, fading like a song that had played perfectly and was ready to rest. As you drifted, you felt something different within you. Not change exactly, not a transformation, more like stillness, deeper than before, a silence that you could carry, one that would travel with you long after the night faded. You reclined gently in the boat and looked up. The sky above was a clear open, full of stars you hadn't noticed earlier. New ones, different constellations, shapes that felt meaningful in a way that you could not explain, like they were spelling out a message you didn't need to read to understand. You closed your eyes, not from tiredness, but from knowing. The boat slowed as it approached a fourth and final resting place. It wasn't a platform this time. It was a cove, shallow, serene, edged with soft moss and glowing stones. The boat glided to a stop and nudged gently into the shore. You stepped out, and the ground beneath you welcomed you like the earth itself had been waiting for your return. At the center of the cove was a low pool, round and still. The surface so perfect it looked like polished glass. It reflected the stars above and the glow within you. You approached it, knelt beside it, and looked in. You expected to see your face, but instead, you saw all the moments that you had been to that led you here. Not in detail, just in feeling. A memory of a breath that you'd taken when no one was watching. The time you paused to feel the wind on your skin, or the quiet tear that had fallen without apology. You saw the softness in you, the strength in you, the light that had never gone out. A whispered stir, the water. This time it came not from within, but from the pool itself. You are whole. You are enough. You are loved. You let the words enter you fully, no resistance. Then, slowly, the image faded and the water returned to stillness. You stood and stepped back towards the boat. The sky had begun to shift again, just a little. The faintest hint of dawn touched the horizon, a soft gradient of color barely rising behind the trees. Not urgent and not loud, just arriving. The boat moved once more, turning towards the shore, where you had begun your journey. But it didn't feel like returning. It felt like remembering, like waking up, not to reality, but to yourself. The lanterns that had led you through the water were still there, now trailing behind you in a line of golden glow. One by one, as you passed, they blinked out, not as a goodbye, but as a nod. Their light had served its purpose. You reached the dock. The boat nestled into place. The path back to the village was visible now in the soft light of early dawn. You stepped onto the cobblestone once more, the same path, but not the same traveler. The village was beginning to stir, but gently. A candle flickered in one window. A kettle began to sing. The cat from before now fully stretched lazily in the same windowsill, blinking once at you, then closing its eyes again. You passed the man on his old porch. His eyes opened, smiled, and nodded. "Welcome home," his smile seemed to say. The sound returned beneath your feet, along with the sand. The sea breathed its soft, familiar rhythm. The same tide, but now it spoke a different language, one you understood without hearing. You turned toward the sea one final time and you whispered, "Thank you." Not because you were leaving it behind, but because now it was part of you. And in that still moment, the sky above began to brighten, just enough to paint the tops of the waves in gold. You inhaled, held, and exhaled, letting the tide carry you into the morning. You were rested, you were whole, and you were home. As you stood at the edge of the beach once more, a warm breeze kissed your face, gentle and slow, as if the sea itself had reached forward to say one last goodbye. The sky, no longer dark, had turned to shades of porcelain blue and golden peach. Clouds stretched overhead like pulled cotton, soft and harmless. The sky that promised a peaceful day, the kind that didn't ask for anything except that you be present. You walked along the shore now, letting your toes press into the wet sand. Each step left a print, then disappeared behind you with the wash of a new wave. Not erased, just gently returned to stillness. The rhythm of your breathing matched the ocean's once again. It wasn't something you tried to do, it simply happened. Inhale, hold, exhale, let go. Far out on the water, the lanterns had disappeared entirely. Not extinguished, not forgotten. Their purpose fulfilled, their glow now lived quietly within you. You paused to look back at the village. It, too, was waking slowly. A figure stepped out onto the cottages with a warm drink in hand. A curtain swayed in an upper window. Somewhere, faint laughter danced on the wind. The world was returning, but not to noise, not to pressure, just to gentle motion. And you were still in that space between sleep and wake, dream and dawn, a liminal place, a sacred one. You felt it in your bones, in your breath, in your heartbeat, that the tide hadn't simply rocked you into sleep. It had rocked you into remembering who you were before the noise, before the rush, before the world told you who to be. You had returned to something ancient, something true, something unshakably calm. And from that place, you whispered the final words, not to the sea, not to the stars, but to yourself. I am whole. I am light. I am home. And the tide answered, yes.